Good evening, everybody. It is me, Comic Crack T Fuller, here with a kind of Sunday wrap up. I've been working all weekend, so didn't have a chance to do a chat with Rasa this afternoon. And all the other thing to talk about is there was the premiere of the interview that I did with for the love of comics conversations for the love of conversations for the love of comics. I mean, interview. This is one of those times we talked about doing live streams. This is one of those times where I'd like to pause and start again. So I'm going to do that. Pause. Welcome. It's Sunday. This weekend, the conversation that I had with For the Love of Comics went live on his channel. He did a premiere. He had reached out to me before the premiere was set because we had discussed trying to maybe set a time where we could both sort of be in the chat room. But like I said, I picked up some work this weekend, and our industry is really, when there's work, you kind of have to take it because it's not consistent necessarily. So I couldn't say no to working a couple of days. It does put me in a 12-day stretch of working, but that's okay. I will survive. So that conversation went live. He did do some editing to it. He kind of told me that. I trust his judgment. I think it was a fantastic conversation. For those of you who watched it, I hope you got something out of it. It was also one of those things that after we did have the conversation, kind of reflecting on it and knowing that it was going to come out soon, I, of course, thought of other things I wish I would have said. I wish I would have been clearer about some things, but I think that's always the case. I feel like I represented my ideas and my beliefs on things pretty concisely in there. If you did watch it, I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to Gore Vidal, Sleepy Reader, and Earl Grey for being in that chat too. I kind of went and sampled a couple of pieces. I wanted to see if there was I was hoping that there would be a kind of catalog of all the chat, but it was only showing sections. But I did see your names pop up in there, so I appreciate you guys checking out the premiere. And if you're new to this channel because you saw that conversation, welcome. It's good to have you here. I hope you're ready for more F-bombs and more pictures of boobies, because that's what we do on this channel here. So yeah, I think it was a good conversation. I'm looking forward to hopefully having some more in the future and, kind of continuing on here. So we didn't do a Sunday chat this afternoon because of work, me and Rasa. It looks like I'm going to have next weekend off. So hopefully we're back next Sunday and we'll talk about books. I have some stuff to talk about tonight. I read a little bit. I didn't read a ton. And then I'll show you kind of the weekly books that I picked up from the local sale that's been going on for the past, I don't know, has it been almost 2 months at this point? It feels like it's been almost 2 months. I did want to talk a little bit, though, because I've been kind of back to work on a more regular basis. I'm starting to see a lot of the other members of our union who I don't always get to see, and it sparked some conversations. Currently, the production that I'm on, obviously I can't talk about too many details, but I believe I can talk about a more broader kind of discussion of what I want to get to. I'm on a particular production right now, and we are working offset, where the rigging grips is the team that we're a part of. And that job is, so far on this production, has been going to locations before the main unit gets there and tenting houses, helping them get set up at various locations for their shooting day. But the meat of our work has been working in the studio, hanging points for chain motors, and putting truss up in the air, running power for those chain motors, and hanging truss for the lighting department to hang lights off of. So it's been a lot of work in lifts, and it's been a lot of work just in general. So classically, with the kind of offset position, specifically within the rigging department, it's been a tough sale in this town for the longest time to kind of have that department work on a full-time basis. There's one of the things that people try to do is to get you into a situation where you're not a full-time employee. And that basically means, well, this week you're going to work 3 days. Next week, we're going to have you come in on Wednesday, Thursday. The week after that, you'll probably just be in on Friday. And with that comes this inherent kind of expectation that you're going to not take other work. It's often unspoken, but you do find out that that's kind of the end goal when you start to say things like, okay, well, if you don't need me for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to sign on to this other show and do 3 weeks there, and then I'll be back for this. Oh, but you can't do that because we're going to need you here. Well, I'm either full-time or I'm part-time. So one of the things that we did on this production is that we said that, it would, if you want us on the show, you'd have to give us a guarantee that it's going to be full-time, and you have to give us a guarantee for a 12-hour minimum day. So even if we work 10 hours, we get paid for 12, that kind of thing. Film obviously is a whole different world when it comes to the working hours. Generally you're working kind of 14 hours a day. It really depends obviously where you're working. So, and that was kind of, it's not unheard of, but it is something that isn't common. And I'm finding that out more so having conversations with other members, and it's really sparking conversations just within our local, and again, just that idea within working environments in general of the expectations of labor when it comes to management and when it comes to employers and things, and that expectation that you're sort of at their beck and call. Within our industry, especially classically here in Winnipeg, it really is a feast or famine. So there's all these shows, then you might see 4 or 5 months off. So right now, though, what we're seeing is so much work coming in at one particular time that it's something that I would tell the members all the time when I worked in the office. We're at a stage where they need us more than we need them. And that's kind of a good place to be in when you're labor, that they need. The biggest part of why the producers and productions coming into town need us as Manitobans working is so they can kind of tap into the tax credit. They have to have a certain percentage of the crew that is Manitoban, or there's a special category where you can deem some people from out of province as Manitobans. There's very strict rules around that, of course, which I won't go into details, but basically the money that they can get on the back end, which is the main reason why they come to our province to shoot, you have to hire Manitobans. So that means that we have a little more of the power at this time where we can say, of course, the option was always there for these employers on this particular production to say, we can't honor that. We don't have the money. They could say whatever they wanted, which is completely their right. It is 100% their right. The good thing about the current situation is, well, thank you very much. That's all right. We understand. So we're going to go look for another full-time job on one of the other shows that are crewing up, right? So it gives us a little more power because there's not that many people around. Especially the stuff that we're doing is a little more specialized. I am not saying I'm an expert in rigging, not at all. I've learned quite a bit on this show, actually, when it comes to kind of putting chain motors up in a studio. So I feel more confident now than I did kind of a few weeks ago, which is also, it's just a rewarding place to be, just as someone who enjoys manual labor and enjoys this kind of thing, right? Like, I find it rewarding that I actually fucking know some of this stuff now, which is kind of nice. And if I ever get an opportunity to do it again, it'll be that much easier for me, right? So all of this kind of leads to the conversation of that, having that power as workers, and how do you get that power, and how do you continually get put in these positions where you're sort of fearful that I can't say no, I do need the money. This is it, it really doesn't give you that much power as a worker if you can't say no to a job. The main part of negotiations is you need to have your bottom line, and you need to know what that bottom line is, and you need to say no if they won't meet that minimum. That's so easy to just say out loud. That's incredibly easy to say, not really easy to actually do. So this leads into some of the stuff I've been hearing from unions. There's an election going on in the United States, in case you didn't know. Coming up in November, I think, right? So one of the things I heard recently was that the Teamsters Union has decided to not endorse their national body has decided not to endorse. My screen has paused. Oh, there we go. I think I'm back. They've decided not to endorse one political candidate over another one. Now, we can get into the meat of the Teamsters Union and what that actually means. It doesn't mean that they've never supported one candidate, because they have. It doesn't mean that even currently there's not factions of the Teamsters Union that is throwing their support behind Kamala Harris, because that is happening. But the official statement from the Teamsters thank all candidates for meeting with members face-to-face during our unprecedented roundtables. Unfortunately, neither major candidate was able to make serious commitments to our union to ensure the interests of working people are always put before big business. We sought commitments from both Trump and Harris not to interfere in critical union campaigns or core Teamsters industries, and to honor our members' right to strike, but were unable to secure those pledges, which is no surprise considering Biden himself even crushed a railway strike. And this is from the General President, Sean M. O'Brien. Our mission as union representatives is clear: to be honest and upfront, to be inclusive, and above all, to be transparent with our membership, which does make me chuckle a little. So this is coming from teamster.org. So right from their website, this is their official letter that they kind of put out there in public. And it goes back to something that I've said here before, that I don't believe any union should be backing one particular candidate over the other. Your focus as a union, and I think where your power comes from, is making sure that your alignment is with your membership, especially when it comes to labor. You have a real mix. I mean, I guess it really depends the industry. You're going to generally, because it's just the real world, not everybody thinks the same way. You're going to have a mix of people that are going to be either voting for Trump, voting for Harris, and then you're also obviously going to have a bunch of people that want to vote third party, or that don't give a shit about voting whatsoever. Your first mission as a union is to support your membership. And I think supporting one particular party or throwing your weight behind one party over another one does a disservice to your membership. I think that it puts you in a bit of a losing position. Let's say that your union goes all out for Harris and decides to support Harris. What if Trump wins and you're now on a stage at the DNC or the RNC talking shit about the other party? How much success do you think you're going to have as a union to get anything done if you've kind of made an enemy out of the party that comes into power? You're going to have a fucking hell of a time if you treat them all with the same brush, which is not endorsing any of them and saying things like, we look forward to working with whoever takes control of the office of the president in the future, and we hope that we can have some yada yada yada, fill in the blanks, right? Like, I just don't understand that backing. I do understand why politicians desperately want to get the endorsement of unions, but I am so disappointed when I see union leaders on the RNC stage, on the DNC stage, supporting the liberal government here over somebody else, supporting the conservative government over somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't think that unions have a place in politics to that degree. Of course, you can be political and you can try to help your communities and things, and you should as a union. And if that happens to align with a particular political party's beliefs as well, so be it. But I think throwing your weight behind a particular candidate or a party is a non-starter, and I don't think it should be. I don't think that idea should be supported whatsoever. So I'm glad to see the Teamsters making that statement, even though I do fully understand that there's a whole bunch of underlying shit that's going on with them. that is not necessarily how they're presenting it in this open letter. Again, for me, the strength and the movements that we need to have going forward are labor driven, and I personally think union driven. But that's just me. Unions are really suffering quite a bit, and that concerns me quite a bit. On that same note, one of the shows that I watch, this is the last bit, and then we'll get into comic type books. One of the shows that I do watch on YouTube is Due Dissidence. One of the frustrating things that I've had watching some of these kind of alternative political streams is they're continually walking down the paths of covering stories in a certain way that they know that their audiences agree with. You're preaching to the converted. That stuff gets a little boring. I understand about wanting to vent. I understand about wanting to call things out. I totally get that. But I'm really, and I have been for quite a while, I'm at a point where we need to see some movement forward. I wish that more of these shows would focus on what can we do now that we all agree on this set of facts that we think are facts. What do we do to move forward? Let's have discussions with people that have an alternative vision for what our world could be, and let's dig into that. So I'm happy that specifically Keaton, one of the hosts on Due Dissidence, has been doing some more coverage of workers, specifically the Lyft and Uber. He had a fantastic piece looking at Lyft and Uber and the games that are being played on those drivers there. It was incredibly interesting. And what made it even more interesting is what he said after the piece itself. And said a lot of the things that I've been saying for a long time. The pointlessness of culture war conversations and arguments, and how ultimately that just hurts us all. And they would love to see us continually arguing about some of this bullshit because it stops us from focusing on what the real problems are. One of the interesting things that he said in that, not quoting him verbatim, but something along the lines of, you get some of these people who are doing these types of shows and they're talking about this shadowy figures that are in the darkness, and they're the ones that are manipulating the government, and they're the ones that are the problem. And he said it's such an unfortunate way to look at things, because it really gives you the idea that there's nothing I can do because it's this invisible force that's there working against us. And he said, when in reality, if you just opened your eyes, you'd see it's probably your fucking employer and politicians that are behind it, and you actually can do something about it. You know, the control of that is within your grasp. Yes, it's still a lot of work. You may not see those changes directly in your lifetime, but you can get there. Hedges has been back on YouTube as well too, Chris Hedges, and been having some great things to say along this line as well, specifically about that idea of being committed to this kind of activism and this kind of thought and this kind of work that you won't actually see reap the benefits of within your lifetime. It may be something that takes a generation or two, but the importance of still doing that work to keep that stuff moving forward. I like that kind of thought. I like hearing that from people. And again, I do think that this culture war stuff does get us nowhere. No matter what side of the argument you're on, whether you're on the orange man bad side or whether you're on the woke side, it doesn't matter to me. I think both levels of conversation are pointless and fucking waste of time for all of us, because we need to be working together to kind of help us all get forward. So that's my piece, and that's been what's on my mind this week from that standpoint. So what have I been reading this week? For those of you that are still here, and for those of you just tuning in now, because for the first 20 minutes, you're going to miss some of this stuff. Welcome. It's Sunday. So not much to say about Precious Metal. I love it. This is a great issue. I'm looking forward to talking about this one in a little more depth with Rasa, She had read it last Sunday when we chatted, but I hadn't got my copy yet. So now I've caught up. So I'll wait to talk to her about that on Sunday. But again, no surprises here. I love the book. I'm so glad that it exists. It's amazing. It's really amazing. Same thing with Kaya. I'll probably wait to talk to Rasa about this as well, because this is another one that she showed off. Again, I didn't have a copy. This one has really taken some kind of dips for me where I wasn't really digging it. But it's this issue was pretty solid, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where it goes. I don't have, even with the issues that haven't been my favorite, I don't have any intention of dropping this. I am still enjoying it enough that I'm willing to see where it goes. And I'm already been it with 20 issues, so we'll see in another 10 issues if it makes it to issue 30. I don't know the long-term plans for it, but I don't think it's the intention is for it to end anytime soon at this 20 issues in. Dan Elson, I'm here. I'm here, and well said opening. I'm halfway through your interview on For the Love of Comics channel. It's been a great listen. Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate you saying that. I always appreciate you stopping by and your support. It does mean a lot to me. And that's, I think, one of the things that I don't think maybe I said enough in that conversation is that the core group of you that do come through, like, I hope you realize that it does mean a lot to me. Like, I do really appreciate your support in a huge way. Because again, I'm not a big channel. I'm not going for advertisement. I'm not going for any of that shit. I do this because I enjoy this. I like talking to you guys. I like, well, talking to myself sometimes, but I do enjoy it, and I do really appreciate the support. So those two will wait for Rasa. I'm going to put those over here, actually, for our chat next week. On to a little bit of the disappointment this week, and I'm kind of I'm disappointed to say it. It's really, man, I these issues, I don't know why Horror in the Dark from Fantagor and for Corbin is such a pricey book to get a hold of. I can only imagine that maybe there wasn't that many printed. Boy, oh boy, was I disappointed in this. There's been letters, I think, in the new volume of Den number 3, which we should talk about briefly. Actually, let's do that first. Let's do that as a precursor to talking about this. I don't have any intention of reading this volume. I've said it before with the Corbin stuff. I kind of can't wait for them to get past the Den storyline. I just feel like I've read the Den stuff so many times. I want to get to the meat. And out of the Den material, I would say that this Fantagor stuff is probably my least favorite. It was okay when I was reading it in the single issues, but it's not something that I feel the need to reread. It does look beautiful. It looks like they've done a fantastic job on this. I haven't done a side-by-side comparison with the actual issues. I'm sure I will sit down at some point. But honestly, this one came in the house. I had a look through it, and then I put it on the shelf. I actually wasn't planning to talk about it, but it sort of ties in. The only thing that I would say about this newest volume, if you were to have any sort of reason to pick this up, it's for the back matter. So this is the book itself, and then this here is all the extra material. What you get in the extra material, I also have a feeling that maybe they knew about this material, and how they needed to maybe spice this up a little bit. The big article in this one is you get Restoring Den by Jose Villarrubia, and he says in it, he talks about his process. He gives you some examples of the material that he's pulling from. I was also happy to see him talk about the material that he looked at specifically is exactly the same stuff that we looked at on the channel, the Catalan and then the heavy metal stuff. So I was pretty excited to see, like, oh wow, he's using that as a resource as well. I love that he has this conversation. He says he felt it was crucial to have this conversation within one of these volumes for kind of future readers of this stuff, because he said he's doing some things that he's not aware that many other people are approaching recoloring the way that he is with this project. So that's fantastic on its own. One of the incredible things about all of the Fantagor Press stuff that Corbin did from when he had his own publishing company was the letters pages and the editorials as he was doing the process. They include a shit ton of it. And one of the letters that they include is from Mr. I always forget his first name, Storman. The fuck is his first name? Craig. I always want to call him Greg Storman. So Craig A. Storman, he had his little company as well too, that of course I'm blanking on. I've got some original art from him. I love his artwork. One of the things that he says in the letter is, come on, Richard, this stuff is too dark. He's talking about a specific story. And of course, Richard says, it's not too dark. It's how I want it. He also complains about the reprinted material that appears in some of these books. He's like, they're not cheap books. You keep giving us stuff to pad the issue, and it's reprints. Blue Comet, thank you very much. Life Brigade, so good. Thank you, Dan. I'll get to your other comments in a second there, Dan. I do see them. So he talks about a couple of things, and those are the two that I wanted to touch on, specifically the darkness. But just to finish this up, page after page after page of reproductions from those comics, letters pages galore, little bit of editorializing from Corbin as he's going through this process of doing his own publishing and talking about the issues he's having. We get a bit of a cover gallery as well too. And then what Jose Villarrubia does is he reprints the first Den story that came in Grim Wit, and he reproduces it pretty let's see, issue 2. He talks about it somewhere. He talks about the way he reproduced it is he wanted it to feel like that old comic. So he wanted to kind of remain true to how that appeared when it first got printed. So that's kind of a nice inclusion as well too. So if you were to get this book, that would be the reason why you would get it, because the Den material at this time that they're reprinting just isn't the most interesting stuff. It's just not the greatest. So that leads us to Horror in the Dark. We'll get to... I really appreciate the entertainment and education you provide, so the road goes both ways. Thank you very much, Dan. Wow, Corbin and disappointed in the same sentence. That's a surprise. Yeah, so that leads me to this. Man, was this ever disappointing. It is so fucking dark. This first story is printed so goddamn dark that it was super frustrating. And not only that, is he's using some shitty computer font, and there's even some computer backgrounds in here. This one there, really specifically, this background. And it's like, it was kind of a shock, honestly, because I don't remember seeing anything like that to this degree with any of the Corbin stuff that I've been reading over the years. It's a real disappointment, and I wonder if that financial strain of doing the comics was getting to him to such a degree that he felt like he had to do something to streamline his process so he could get books out on time. One of the things he talks about is kind of the timeline on getting this material out. And I imagine for anybody publishing comics, there's that consistency is where you're going to retain a lot of your fan base. And if all of a sudden you're late by a couple of weeks, or God forbid, like a month, you're going to have people that are going to forget about your book. So there's some good moments. These characters kind of melting due to the curse of this necklace are pretty cool for sure. But overall, the story is so dark. And then what Storman says is also true here. We then get it padded with some material from the Undergrounds that we've all read before, or those of us who are really into Corbin have already in other places. So it is disappointing. Now, this stuff is produced pretty well. It looks way better than the first story, but it's extra disappointing with this because this horror in the dark is, like I said, for some reason, really difficult to get your hands on. These issues were expensive. Yes, I had trade credit in there, and that sort of helped ease the pain. But I don't know, man. It's one of those books I've been really looking forward to checking out. And it's just, it's a bummer that it's just not very good. So out of all of the Corbin stuff, and so that was issue 1. My hopes after reading issue 1 is the other one I picked up from Lone Star was issue number 3. I'm like, well, maybe it was just a one-off. Maybe by issue number 3, he's got things sorted out. Turns out that's not the case. There's moments again where it's a little better. Like I would say that's a pretty great panel, but then you still get moments like this that are pretty dark. Not as dark as that first issue for sure, but still not kind of prime Corbin. So I would say for anybody looking to dig into some Corbin stuff and maybe try to get their hands on some of the Fantagor Press stuff, I don't think I could recommend this one to you. I think I would suggest to kind of stay away from this one unless you find it for dirt cheap. I don't think this is a good representation of his work. I do feel like his Fantagor Press stuff is worth picking up. And again, the only reason I might suggest picking this up is the same reason to pick up that new book. You still get the inside front cover and the inside back cover chock full of letters and quite a lot of responses from Corbin himself. And again, the conversation that he has with his readers about printing this stuff. I think he even goes into some of these issues. He even talks about how many copies he's printing. I'm not seeing anything within this one, but so that stuff is really great material. It's great to hear from an artist / publisher on the woes of publishing at this time. This stuff is like what, 91 or something like that, I think. So yeah, Horrors in the Dark, a real bummer, man. A real bummer. Really good info. I have that first issue, but not the other 3. And as a Corbin completist, I figured I'd get them eventually. Hopefully Jose can restore the art for a future hardcover. Yeah, I'd be curious to see how much of the Fantagor stuff, because it is Dark Horse / Fantagor that's doing these reprints. I imagine that they're going to get to a point where they reprint all of the Fantagor Press stuff. Again, I want to see them reprint Bloodstar. I want to see them reprint Tales of the Arabian Nights. I think those are 2 prime Corbin stories that I would love to see a nice rendition of. You could probably, well, Bloodstar is pretty thick. You could probably fit both of them in one book, though. That would be ideal, but I don't know if that'll happen. Okay, so with my daughter, we are almost through. We're halfway through volume 7 of Usagi Yojimbo. So we didn't get through the 2 books in this week like I thought we might. But we did finish this one. When we started reading this one, we got about halfway through, and I decided to look online to see if we could find. I realized I never really checked eBay for any of these books. So we found book 2 and book 3 for $5.99. I think it cost about $24 to ship it. So the price that I paid for kind of like book 1, we found books 2 and 3 from Fantagraphics. So they are on their way to us as we speak. They should hopefully be here in about a week or 2. We're both incredibly excited. We loved this book. We're loving book 7 as well. And again, I say the same thing over and over again. It's so full of some really, really good moments. Some genuinely incredible cartooning, expressive. I love the way he draws. This one is kind of more I guess, Sakai level of horror. So seeing this kind of ghost demon up in the corner of the room there and kind of lunging at him, he's taken her hand across when he crossed this bridge. So good, really, really good. And again, like even the stuff that's kind of a little more scary, it isn't scary in a way that my daughter will have nightmares from it. This one was probably our favorite story out of the book, The Duel. He runs into there's this village that has these running duels where people are head to head, and inevitably it's I want to fight with real swords, and people gamble on it. We find out that one of the swordsmen is in league with the guy running the bets. He's watched Usagi cut down somebody, and kind of has analyzed his style, befriends him, takes him out for a meal, and kind of wines and dines him to get to know him a little better, and says, I know that I can beat this guy. So we're going to make a ton of money on this. The usual, I'm going to retire. After this one, I'm retiring. So we get to meet his wife and child as well, his small child. And I think you can guess the way that this kind of goes. There will be spoilers here. So if you don't want to see spoilers, I guess skip ahead a couple of minutes. And it was, again, like reading it with my daughter. She was incredibly touched by the end of it. She could feel it. She said how sad the ending is. So, of course, he goes head to head with Usagi, and Usagi cuts him down. No surprise there. And he tells his wife not to come to this particular battle. Meet me just outside of town. Once I've won and get the purse, I will come and see you. And of course, our last page is her with the baby sitting on the hill, waiting. And finally, as the sun sets and the moon comes up, she starts to cry, and the baby is starting to cry. Incredibly touching. And it's amazing what he's able to do with this character, this goddamn funny animal comic. You know what I mean? So really impressive stuff. But that was probably the most touching story. This was a good one too. So really, really great. It's so much fun reading this stuff with her too. Really highly recommended if you have kids. Every page of those Usagi volumes are perfect. Can't beat Sakai in black and white, in my opinion. Yeah, and those stories are amazing. Video Homicide. Hello, how the hell are you? Hey, man, glad to catch you live. I'm glad to see you live. It's good to... I know that you often do Friday late night chats, but I just haven't been around to kind of dip in while you've been live. So that's that one. Of course, I read the issue of Thorgal that I got with the My Comic Shop order. That was a no-brainer. It was fantastic. We get to go to Asgard. We get to see Loki. We get to see Thor. We have Jolin, who is Thorgal's son, going to Asgard on a mission with his own little army. This one was so interesting because it had a similar mood as some of the kind of fantasy movies that I watched growing up. Like Dark Crystal, or what's the one where he's flying on that giant bear-looking thing? What the fuck is that one called? Anyway, it had a feel of those kind of fantasy movies from when I was a kid. Jolin goes with his army that is dolls that have been brought to life. They end up staying in Asgard. They, of course, have this big battle where you think that maybe they're going to be outgunned, and it turns out not to be the case. It was such a good story. Was it my favorite of the Thorgal stuff? Never Ending Story. Thank you, Video Homicide. That's exactly the one I was thinking of. Was it the best Thorgal volume? No, but it was still really good. I'm glad to see that it's continuing. In that video, I made a mistake. So I've got the first, this is 24. I do have the first 24. The only one I'm missing is there was a 0 issue. And then the newest one, I think, is 25, or at least the newest Cinebook English volume, I believe, is number 25. So That's the one that I'm missing, plus this 0 issue. But other than that, I've caught up on everything else. There's a look at the back cover. They always give you there's the full catalog. Again, if you're new to the channel, or if you haven't heard me talk about Thorgal in the past, this is so highly recommended. It is such a great series. I would suggest starting from the beginning, but it is one of those where you don't necessarily need to. I think it's a little more rewarding if you try to start somewhere near the beginning. But I will also say that I know that for the English volume, they did switch up some of the stories. They didn't put it out kind of chronologically as it was released originally. But I don't think they, put out volume 10 when they should have put out volume 1 or something. It wasn't that dramatic. But it's strongly recommended. It's such a good book. And last but certainly not least, for what I've read this week is, of course, I read the 3 Young Blueberry. So one of the books that I got was issue number 1, which completes my Young Blueberry run. There was only the 3 of them that got put out by Comcat. I know that Young Blueberry, I think, continued on with another artist, like maybe 10 years after after volume 3, I think is what the timeline was. So I never thought I would actually get my hands on issue number 1. This was not a cheap book, but it was a must for me. I needed to have this to complete the run. And what I'll say about this first is I was very surprised at how the story started. So this Young Blueberry series takes place firmly in the Civil War era. And the first story starts off when we get introduced to Blueberry at this time. He is, in fact, somebody that comes from a family that owns slaves, and he doesn't see a problem with it whatsoever. And that's probably the only thing that I found wasn't handled very well, because we touch on that in the first half of this first little story within this volume. He quickly changes his tune, and it's not a satisfying change. I would have loved to actually seen this entire first volume where he's maybe struggling with that a little bit more, or there's more things that push him towards, hey man, fuck, was that ever stupid of me to think so? It's a real quick about face that he does, that just kind of reads very, very sloppily. But again, with some of this material, you're not reading it because the storytelling is groundbreaking. You're in it for the Moebius art. And the Moebius art at this time, from what I understand, he was doing it all with a brush. There's an extra looseness to this early stuff. And that's also due to the presentation here. Like the coloring is a little more blown out. It feels like it's done with marker. It's not as crisp as you might associate with Jean Giraud, who, of course, we're talking about here. Moebius was his name for more of his sci-fi stuff. One of the things that happens in book 3, though, is they do reprint a story where he moves away from the brush, and he uses a pen, I think, or a marker or whatever it was. And you can tell the difference. You can really tell the difference in that style. These were still really entertaining stories, though. Once you got past that first little one, the rest of them are pretty good. The only thing I was confused about as it was going is his association, his kind of continually switching sides. It got a little confusing as to, like, okay, so because there was a lot of like, he's a traitor. Yeah, but is he a traitor there because he was pretending to be with them and he was actually with the Union? Or was it he was with the Union and he was, like, there was just some moments where it was hard to keep track of who some of the characters were and who it was that was pissed off at him and why. So it got a little muddled. But there are some pretty cool stories here. You do get to really see his personality develop, that, of course, we know a lot better with the regular Blueberry series. So it was so much fun to read these again. I'll probably end up talking about these again with Rasa when we talk next Sunday, because I'm sure I don't know if Rasa has read some of this stuff digitally, and I don't remember what Rasa has from Blueberry. I know she's a huge fan. I don't remember what it is that she actually owns from Blueberry. So, so good, man. So good. Dan says, I've never come across any Thorgal in a shop, but I'll have to order one. Yeah, and it's pretty rare for me as well, too, especially here in Winnipeg. When I went to Toronto and went to the Beguiling in the basement had a bunch of Cinnabook stuff, but the prices on that Cinnabook stuff was really expensive, so I ended up not getting any of them. Pardon me, while I was there. They had so many other good books at the Beguiling that that one was something that I wasn't too concerned with getting my hands on, because I know that I can order it online. Blueberry's like that. Every page jammed with so much story and art and characters. You have to be really engaged to keep track, but it's so worth it. It really is, because I read one a night actually over the course of 3 nights, and I think that was the best way to do it. Just before bed, I'd read a volume of Blueberry and then turn out the lights. Really, really good shit. So that's everything that I read this week. So we'll take a look at the stuff that I picked up from the local sale, and then we'll call it a night. This week was a Milo Manara week. There was a lot of Manara stuff that came up for sale. Some of it that I had, but there's a few books here that I got that I've never seen before and I'm looking forward to. But I also managed to pick up a couple of other things. So one of them is R. Crumb's Best Buy Comics. This is a second print. She had 2 of these up for sale. This was the cheaper of the 2 of them. I couldn't pass it up. I love that cover. It's nice to have some more R. Crumb stuff. So this is R. Crumb and Elaine Kaminsky Crumb as well, too. So it's both of them doing comics together. So that was also a reason to pick it, even though she doesn't get credit on the front cover. I think she does. Does she do more stories? Yeah, the last story here, she's working with him as well. So we do get some of that. That they also appeared in Dirty Laundry. That was their title, that they shared title that they had together. So this one is from 1979. Is the publication year of this Crumb comic. I've said it a million times in the past. I love Crumb's art. I think he's a fantastic cartoonist. I'm not a diehard Crumb completist, but this was one of those that I couldn't pass up. The price was right on it, so that's nice to add to the underground drawer. One that I was really excited about, and she had a few of them, but I had the other, or no, I think she had 2 of them, and I had the other issue. Thankfully, she was willing to break up the pair of them and just sell me the one. This is Comics International, issue number 3. More Corbin in here, but we also get, who else do we get? Fernando Fernandez, Jeff Jones, and Esteban Morato are in this as well. So it starts off with a couple of Corbin stories, and then we get into the rest of the book. And Corbin actually does some coloring, not only for his. There's a Jeff Jones story that Corbin does coloring for as well. And then I think, is it the Esteban Morato story that he does the coloring for? Where's the credits there? Prologue. Yeah, the Fernando Fernandez stuff. So Corbin does the coloring for this as well too. So beautiful magazine. Again, not a magazine that's very easy to find. It's taken me years to find the few issues that I do have. I think, do I have 3 of the issues now? I don't remember. I'd have to dig back in the boxes. But this is yeah, creepy and eerie stuff. That's correct. Creepy, eerie, and I think there's a Vampirella one in this one too. And they also show Spirit on the back, but I think this is just the ad for the other stuff that Harris was putting out, or sorry, not Harris, Warren was putting out at the time. So yeah, I think this is only a 4, is it a 4-5 issue thing that happened? So nice to get another volume of that. That's on the to read pile for sure. Like a lot of this stuff I've been getting from her. I'm at a point now where I have a gigantic, this plus the my comic shop order that's still sitting beside me here. I've got a lot to read. And then the last 4 books are Manara. So this is Click. We won't go through all of these. These are all Catalan Communications books, and they're all gorgeous. They're in really, really nice shape, which again isn't a surprise considering the books that have come from this collection. This guy really took care of his stuff. One called Shorts, which I believe is a collection of short stories or short subjects. Yeah, so inspired by images from Picasso to Fellini, Manara explores the underside of popular culture, film, television, music. Little escapes his satirical and irreverent line. Each story is tightly focused, a concentrated dose concocted to leave us with a grin, slightly twisted, of appreciation. So collection there, pretty thin one. And then these last 2 are pretty beefy. This one I'm very excited about. This is Federico Fellini and Milo Manara working on a book together. This was a trip to Tulum from a script for a film idea. We'll have a quick flip through this one. There's a whole bunch of extra material at the beginning where they have, I think they have some photos and sketches and excerpts from what this project was going to be before they kind of show you the story itself. So we get some drawings, I think. Yeah, drawing by Fellini himself there. I thought so. Yeah, so a little sketch by Fellini himself in there. And then kind of the backstory about it. And then we finally get the story itself. And one thing I'll say about this one is the color is fucking extraordinary in this book. The coloring is just gorgeous, really not oversaturated, not subtle either, but there's a certain texture to the coloring that is beautiful. So this is kind of top of the pile as far as the books that I want to read from this Manara chunk that I got. So very, very excited about that one. And then the last one that I got was Perchance to Dream, The Indian Adventures of Giuseppe Bergman, and it's adults only. Of course, I don't remember if this was something else that was influenced by Fellini. So this one on the back, it says an Italian film company has lost contact with its cast and crew on location in India. Only useless tapes arriving by mail attest to their existence. Then the video cassettes stop arriving, and our hero is hired as a driver for the expedition sent out to find the crew. So sounds great. And again, this is a pretty thick volume as well, too. So very, very cool stuff this week. She's had a couple of postings already, and I've picked up some things. And I'll probably end up going this Friday again to kind of grab them. I'm trying my damnedest to be a lot more picky, but it's just there's so much good stuff that she's selling in this collection. So there's always something incredible. That's what I thought about the Comics International and why I haven't tracked them down. I have that Creepy Presents Richard Corbin hardcover from Dark Horse. Oh, nice. Which is the book I'd grab if I could only keep one thing from my collection. Yeah, and I've heard that about that, and I think that's one that went out of print almost immediately. Oh, Score, I have the first chapter of that trip to Tulum in an anthology. It's fantastic. Cool. I'm looking forward to it. And then that chapter, the last book I'm assuming you were talking about, that chapter I read was Black and White. So yeah, some Manara stuff. I love his style. I don't know a lot about Manara. I'm far from an expert on him, but I do really appreciate his art style. And again, having this much Catalan Communication stuff and Comcat stuff is such a treat, and Cinebook and all these other things. It's such a treat to kind of have access to that stuff now and have those in the collection so I can read them. That is it. Thank you very much, Dan. Good to see you. Sleepy Reader off the top. Nice to see you as well. And of course, Video Homicide. Thanks very much for tuning into the live stream here. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good week. And we will see you next Sunday. Right on. Later.